Hello, this is Victor Neustroev, and in this video I would like to share with one of my recent games that I played in Greece. In this game I outplayed a Russian Wunderkind, Volodar Murzin. This is a 13 years boy, now you can see his picture, but in his age he already has a rating even higher than some international masters have. His current rating is 2429. For example, as for me, when I was 13, my rating was approximately 2100, so he is 300 higher than me when I was 13. And he is considered to be a real Russian star, like, for example, I believe he is a future Sergei Karakin at least. He is so experienced, he played against many grandmasters and won many games against them. And maybe you know, he is a Europe champion among boys under 10, if I'm not mistaken. After that, he also won so many trophies, so that I can't just tell you how many exactly, but really many. He is a real Russian star, and I believe he can become a future grandmaster and be in the top. Okay, anyway, so this video is about what I played against him and how it happened that I outplayed him. Looking forward, I can say that I played almost with no mistakes. I made a few inaccuracies, but it was fine. He also made a few mistakes. Okay, anyway, before I start with the game analysis, I'll want to tell you that when I know the pairings that I'm gonna be playing with Volodar Murzin, I started analyzing his games, and I want to show you one of the games that I of course analyzed and that I was expecting to play. So I know he plays e4, so e4, c5, this is what I was going to play, knight f3, e6. And there was a game in May, so 3 months ago, that he played against a grandmaster, Dmitry Gordievsky. And in that game, Dmitry played really well and won. What happened then? g3, knight c6, bishop g2, knight f6, queen e2, e5, castle, bishop e7, c3, castle, d3, h6, knight a3, rook e8, knight c4, bishop f8, and in that game bishop d2 was played by Volodar, then d6, knight a3, and d5. This is a good move, however, when I analyzed this game, I thought that bishop e6 is better. Bishop e6 and then d5. If, for example, here c4 to prevent d5 activity, then black has several plans, for example, knight d4, queen d7, a6, b5, or black can just play g6 and fiancetta his dark squared bishop. Like this. Bishop d7 with the idea to take on d5 with the knight, then the other knight goes to d4. The position is complicated, but black has a really good and solid position. I can't say that white is better. At the same time, I'm not sure that black is better. It's approximately equal. This is what I expected to play. And almost the same thing happened. e4, c5, knight f3, e6. So you know I'm playing Khan variation. g3, knight c6, bishop g2, knight f6. If here he plays e5, then of course knight g4. This is a strong move. e5 can be a weakness. Queen e2. And here I played e5. Maybe you can notice that I played e5 by spending 2 tempers. However, I can also say that queen e2 is a kind of a tempo loss, and in this position it's more important to control the d4 square. Usually, I prefer to play such positions without dark squared bishops on the board, but sometimes you have to keep your dark squared bishop, like, for example, here. Castle, bishop e7, c3, castle, d3, h6. Why I played h6 here? I just don't want him to play bishop g5, take on f6, and then occupy the d5 square with one of his knights. Moreover, h6 can be a helpful move in future. Knight e3, rook e8, knight c4, and bishop f8. So everything that happened in the game between Murzin and Gordievsky happened in our game too. However, in this position, instead of bishop d2, he played rook e1. But I decided not to create something different. I played d6, knight a3, and of course d5 here can be played, but bishop e6. I thought this move is better, and yes, that's true. h3. As for h3, I can say that's a kind of a tempo loss. If I were playing for white, I would choose something better. For example, no, maybe b3 with the idea to play bishop b2. But usually when white locates his pieces this way, he wants to attack on the king side. That's why h3. To be able to play knight h2, then maybe knight g4, also to use the f pawn. This is where I decided to open the position, and I played d5. This is the strongest move here. I was expecting him to play e takes on d5, or maybe knight f5 immediately. If e takes on d5, knight takes here, knight takes knight, bishop takes here, and if, for example, c4 with the idea to win a pawn on e5, I was expecting to play knight d4. I was planning to play this move. So if he doesn't take, then I trade on f3 and play against the weakness on d3. If he takes, then I take on g2. King has to take. Otherwise, I also take the pawn on h3. And then queen takes on d4. Now there is a weakness on d3. Of course, this bishop is not so good, but at the same time, the weakness on d3 is really a big problem for white, and I'm going to double and attack it. So I think black is slightly better in this position. And it's black who is playing for a victory, especially in case if black takes the pawn on d3. However, instead of playing knight d4, bishop e6 is another move, and the pawn on e5 is not hanging because of several ideas. First, knight takes e5, queen e5, queen d3, winning the pawn back, and the pawn on b7 is not hanging. This is a weak move because then bishop c4. And if white decides to trade his queen for two rooks, here on e8, then queen f1 with a strong attack, like this. Black is winning. Another idea is not to take on e5 immediately, but to get rid of the bishop by playing bishop h3. Because if he takes, then I take with my knight, and I'm threatening to play knight f3. Queen f3, and his rook is hanging. At the same time, the pawn on d3 is hanging, so bishop e3, then I take on d3 with extra pawn. He has a compensation with a bishop pair, but it can't compensate extra pawn. If instead of taking on h3, he takes on c6 with his bishop, b takes on c6, queen h5, I just retreat. If he takes on c6, he loses on d3. If not, then just rook c8, and I have a bishop pair where I'm slightly better. So actually e takes on d5 was in my favor, and in this position he played knight h2. What do you think? How to react? Of Of course, here I reacted to play d4. I prefer to play such positions with more space. If c takes on d4, knight takes on d4. Knight f5. This is what I predicted, of course. And in this position, I played queen d7. However, after that move, I regretted that I chose a wrong move order. It was better, I think, to take on c3 and then to play queen d7. However, even queen d7 is a good move. But if I play queen d7 first, then I should analyze c4 and this sacrifice. Here, black is still better because of extra pawn, but white has a partial compensation for that pawn. So I played queen d7, of course g4. Otherwise, I just take on f5 and win a pawn. D takes on c3, b takes on c3. This is how I made the pawn on d3 a weakness. And now rook a d8. Bishop f1. Again, this is what I expected him to play. Another move was rook d1, but he has to play with the rook twice. Then I can play c4 immediately, for example. The rook is pinned, so it's not in his favor. Bishop f1 looks more solid. Moreover, the bishop has nothing to do on this diagonal, while the pawn is on e4. How would you play in this position as black after bishop f1? What do you think black plan should be? If you want, you may pause this video and try to think. However, I played c4, and at that moment this move looked really natural. The idea is that he can't push the pawn to d4, he has to take, and then I play against his weaknesses c4 and c3. But at the same time, I could play b5, threatening to play both c4 and b4. For example, bishop e3, b4. He takes, but knight b4 to put more pressure on d3. Rook d1, queen a4. He has two weaknesses, while I have only one on c5. This is how I could switch the game to the queen side and stop his king side attack, because he has to have his queen on e2 to be able to protect his weaknesses. However, I even didn't analyze b5, I played c4, that's a kind of inaccuracy, but anyway, my position is better. D takes on c4, and knight a5. Queen f3. In this position, I spent much time. By the way, can you please answer the question? What white is threatening in this position? If, for example, I take on c4, what he can do on the next move? This position he is threatening with knight h6, because after g takes on h6, my knight on f6 is hanging. I played knight h7. This is a logical move, but at that moment during the game I thought that knight h7 wasn't the best solution. I thought that there is a better solution, but for some reason I don't see it. But knight h7 is a very solid move. It also has the idea to go to g5, and bishop g5, h takes on g5 is in my favor. Especially looking at his dark squares, which can be occupied by my other pieces, for example, my other knight. Okay. And after this move, I thought he would play queen g3. Then knight takes c4, g5, h takes or knight takes on g5. Then queen takes on g5, and here I remember I found queen d2, queen e4 with the idea to trade the queens, because with no queens there is no attack on the king side. I have nothing to worry about. As for the queen side and in the center, my pieces there are located much better, and I'm playing for a victory. For example, queen d2, it's difficult to find a good move. From d2, I control the h6 square. Of course, he can deliver a check, but I can just move my king to h6 or h7. Then he has to trade the queens. Queen g3 wasn't played in the game. He played bishop e3 with the idea to take on a7. I didn't pay much attention to this move because I was considering that bishop takes on a7 is a doubtful idea. And yes, it's not the best choice for white. I take on c4, bishop a7, and here I analyzed several moves and chose the most solid. However, I missed such ideas like knight d2, queen g2, knight f1, and queen c6. Yeah, exactly, queen c6, this is the move I missed. What's the idea? It's a double attack. We are threatening to play b6 to lock the bishop to trap the bishop, then win it. At the same time, we are taking on c3 and maybe on e4 in some variations. For example, bishop e3, rook d3. The idea is to take on c3 with rook, c4, queen c4, h4, knight f6, and then just rook a8 to be able to take on a2. If g5, just knight h5, and if g takes on h6, I have nothing to worry about. I can just play g6. The pawn on h6 will be lost anyway, and you see I'm winning the pawn on a2. After that I can trade the queens, and finally I can be one pawn up. I analyzed knight d2, but didn't catch the idea and was too afraid of the kingside attack. Another option that came to my mind was knight g5 move. However, I thought that knight g5 is the object of the attack and h4 can be played. So queen g2, rook e8, bishop c4, bishop comes to e3, but in this position again I can play queen c6. And then knight goes to e6, g5, h5. g6 doesn't work, just knight f4. Queen g5, here I can just play rook e6 and start the attack on his king. I can sacrifice the pawn on f4 here, that's not a big problem. I can also take the c3 pawn. But the problem was that I just didn't notice queen c6. And in this position I was expecting to play rook a2 move. This was my variation, rook a2, bishop a2. And then he has several attacks. f4, for example, doubly taking two pieces, or h4, knight e6, and g5. The position isn't clear. I would say it's approximately equal. However, I was considering this is a strong attack and I'd better avoid it. That's why I didn't play knight g5. However, b5 doesn't work at all because he can just retreat. I played rook e8. I think this is the most solid and most safe way to continue in this position. He takes, I take on c4, he retreats to e3, and then I take on a2. Again, taking on a2 wasn't the best option. Queen c6 was better, but at that moment I just wanted to gain a pawn back. Queen g3. What's the idea of queen g3 move? What do you think? Of course, he wants to push the pawn to g5, trade his bishop for a knight, attack on g7. Of course, g7 is protected, but he has some ideas with knight h6. Nothing that can scare me, but I decided to play queen d3 to attack two pawns simultaneously. However, again, queen c6 was a better choice. Bishop d2, then just knight f6. f3, protecting the pawn on e4, but here my piece is allocated better, just knight d7, and after g5, h5, and maybe g6, or even without g6 I'm okay, because he can't play g6 himself. Queen d3, bishop c1. In this position I was choosing between queen c2 and queen takes on g3, and again decided to play queen g3 because the end game is in my favor. Rook c8, attacking here on c3, bishop d2, knight g5. In this position I was thinking he would play king g2, then knight e6, knight f4 with check, and after he takes on f4 he gets a weakness on c3. But I was really worried when he played h4. I thought this is a bad move, but actually king g2 and h4 are approximately equal. And this position, of course, knight h3, knight f4 makes sense. However, I decided to play knight e6. Knight f3, f6 to protect the pawn on e5. Knight f5. He wants to continue the attack, but you see he has only a few minor pieces and the rook to attack. There is no chance to give a checkmate. His only hope is to ruin my pawn structure. Rook d8 with the idea to play rook d3. g5, I take with my h-pawn and then play rook d3. Attacking on f3. King g2, for example, here is a bad move. I can play knight c5 and g takes f6, g takes f6. And then I'm threatening to take on e4 in some variations, then play bishop d5 and use the pin on the main diagonal. It doesn't work immediately, but in some lines it works. He made the best move, rook e3. In this position, maybe bishop c4 was better, but I had a clear idea to attack on e4, that's why bishop b1, so I'm threatening to take on e3. G takes on f6, and here I decided to think whether to take the rook first or to take on f6. If, for example, I take the rook first, he has f7 move. King f7, knight e5 check. King retreats, bishop e3, bishop takes on e4 and knight d4, then the position becomes equal. Just 2 pawns left for each side, and I'm gonna trade another pair of minor pieces, so not so many chances to win here. That's why g takes on f6, to avoid all the complications. And in this position I didn't really like the move that he played. He played knight g3. However, I expected him to play rook e1. To take on f3, here is a mistake. I don't win anything in such a case. If there was a pawn on g5, then maybe rook f3 makes sense, but not in this position. Here I have to save my bishop. Then knight c5. And bishop comes to c6 to attack on e4. This is the main weakness. And he also has to protect the pawn on c3, of course. Knight g3. Knight c5. And again, here rook e1 was a better choice, but he decided to trade the rooks. Now he loses the pawn on e4, and he will be down a pawn. How to play in this position? You have several ideas what to do, and of course there are many winning moves, but because I have a good bishop, the bishop on e4 is really good, while he has a knight, I can just use the idea that the bishop restricts the knight. Bishop d5. Because my idea is to trade a light squared bishop for this knight. because this endgame with bishops of the same color and extra pawn is absolutely winning. That's why he is forced to play c4. How to play then? Of course, bishop c6 is a winning move, but I played bishop e6 with the idea to play bishop b4, take his knight, maybe take his knight, and then bishop takes on c4. With 2 extra pawn, I can win this opposite colored bishop endgame. I can just create 2 distant passed pawns, and he is unable to catch them because he can't cover, he can stop both pawns with his bishop. That's why here he has to push the pawn again, and now this pawn is far advanced, so that if I locate my king on d5, I can easily take it. Moreover, after c5 is played, I can just go back to d5 with my bishop to stop his knight. King f1, king f7, king f6. In this position, he made a critical mistake. He decided to play king to d3. That's a losing move, but at that moment, I think he already realized that the game is lost. What do you think? What black should do? How to play? If you want, you may pause this video and try to find the solution yourself. However, I can demonstrate. I played f5 with the idea to play f4 to trap this bishop. If bishop moves, I just capture the pawn on c5. If he plays f4, I can capture the pawn on f4 and then take the pawn on c5. However, he played a weaker move. He played f3. And after the next move, he resigned. What was the next move? On the next move, I just took on f3 with my bishop. Why? Because if knight takes, I push the pawn to e4. And after king d5, I win the second pawn. With 2 extra pawn, it's winning. And king f4 doesn't work because bishop h6. Oh, this position is winning, of course. Okay, this is how I outplayed this Russian Wunderkind, the future grandmaster. The main idea and the main factor that helped me not to get a bad position, so to get the advantage from the first move, was a good preparation. And of course, in this game, I was concentrated. I was totally focused on the game, on what is happening, and I didn't blunder anything, any move. I was expecting him to play this or that move, and he played it with almost no exclusions. Okay, thank you for your attention. I am planning to upload more videos from my recent tournaments. See you.